It's WrestleMania week. Happy WrestleMania week. Hope you're doing well. If you've clicked on this video, thank you so much for checking out SCW, and you must be in the mood for a retro review. WrestleMania 17 is going to be reviewed for you here today, and I'm going to answer the question, is it the greatest WrestleMania of all time? And I'm going to answer that question straight after this. So here we go then, WrestleMania 17, the review for you here. And of course, like any good WrestleMania, it starts off with a video package, the celebration of life, celebrating the best moments from WrestleMania 1 to that point, the present day in 2001. Freddie Blassie was in there, and of course you got iconic moments like seeing Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. You saw, of course, bits of WrestleMania 1 where it all started. Even at that point, some of the superstars that were going to be the showcase of this WrestleMania, including Stone Cold Steve Austin from his moment where the Attitude Era began, where the Austin Era began, winning the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 14. And that video package then continued for the pay-per-view, starting with the fantastic song Limp Bizkit and My Way. Still one of my favourite songs to this day, not just because it's the time I grew up with that song as well, but using it for WrestleMania. And it just, I don't know, sometimes songs just really fit a pay-per-view. This one just fits so beautifully and poetically, and this literally, it's lasted with me to this point where it's one of my favourite songs to this day. And of course it is used for that mega main event of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, which I'll be discussing later in the video. But of course you go in and you see WrestleMania at the staging, and at this point we'd had sort of arenas for quite a while, but this felt like we'd gone bigger, we'd gone better for WrestleMania 17. I remember seeing that staging of WrestleMania 17, that Titantron, and it just being so tall and so high, and thinking that it just never ended. As someone that was in my teens watching that, I just thought it looked really awesome, and it stood out from things that I'd seen from years previous. And I must admit, even though we've seen bigger and better with other WrestleMania stages probably since then, I think this one still holds up with the test of time when you watch it now. I still say it's one of the best, perhaps top 10 WrestleMania sets of all time, even to this day, and that's going 20 years later. On the commentary team, have to give a shout out to good old JR Jim Ross, who was partnered with Paul Heyman on the commentary booth. Of course, Paul Heyman, ECW, had not long folded at this point. The Monday Night War was finished as well with WCW. That will be discussed further in this video as well. But of course, Jim Ross, on top of his game, 2001, the Attitude Era, and of course, we know Paul Heyman with a live mic in 2001, the Attitude Era. You know, at any given time, something, anything can come out of Paul Heyman's mouth at any given time. This was a duo, worked so well, and the fact that they had back and forth all through the night just made it an entertaining spectacle, not just to watch, but also to listen. Of course, WrestleMania 17 was in the Astrodome in Houston, Texas, a full packed place, and I tell you what, the fans, they were wild and they were noisy the whole evening. And yeah, I mean, of course, we got a view as well of WWE New York. What a fun throwback, that really took me back, just seeing the scenery of WWE New York back then as well. But we go in then to the first match of the evening, which was Chris Jericho against William Regal. To give you a little bit of the backstory of this feud, Regal was the commissioner at the time, and he had Chris Jericho on his back since day one of becoming the commissioner, telling him to shut the hell up, as well as Jericho would always famously do. Commissioner Regal puts Jericho in multiple handicap matches, the likes against Right to Censor and of course the Dudley Boyz in a tables match. Jericho would get his revenge though by attacking William Regal dressed as Doink the Clown. Who remembers Doink? A fantastic character throwback to be brought in here as well, and also besmirching the commissioner by peeing in his tea. Spot a pee, Mr. Regal? And to tell you, that facial from Mr. Regal as well when having that tea is just absolutely hilarious. It's so good to see. And to be honest, to see the build that's actually putting this for an Intercontinental Championship match, you just don't see some of the, the mid-card lower feuds get this much of attention as a build-up in a feud this much these days on WWE TV. So already I'm seeing something that I can see comparing then to now and saying that I felt that this was much better. But going into the match itself was a fun little opener. Went about 7 to 8 minutes between these two. And I mean, Regal had been targeting Chris Jericho's shoulder throughout the match. Of course, the Regal stretch was Regal's finishing move, and that had been used quite a lot, used on the build-up. Regal exposing the turnbuckle, looking to use that to his advantage later in the match. This was actually reversed though when this attempt was used by Chris Jericho, and Regal went headfirst into that exposed turnbuckle, and then Chris Jericho picking up the victory with the line salt for the 1, 2, 3. I would argue that this match was slightly shorter than I was expecting, but the fun, fast paces of this match, you kind of felt like it was, you know, if you blinked, you'd miss something. It was almost like can't miss TV, and this was a really fun way to open the show with such what I would say. It was a fun program overall, and having a strong, popular babyface going over in the opening, Chris Jericho as well. So no, for me, thumbs up all around. Great start to the pay-per-view. We cut backstage and Shane McMahon arrives in a WCW limo. Of course, he actually purchased WCW from under Vince McMahon's nose just 6 nights earlier on the Raw go-home show to WrestleMania 17. So this was quite a big arrival with Shane McMahon coming in with the WCW limo. The APA, we get a shoot back to them, of course, with Jacqueline in the APA office. Bradshaw's saying about his previous experiences and what the Astrodome means to him. Of course, Bradshaw, a native Texan, who was going to be performing in front of a hometown crowd. So this meant a lot to him. We get to the next match, which of course featured the APA and Tazz in a 6-man tag team match against Right to Censor. Right to Censor first to come to ringside. Stevie Richards gonna actually say some words to the crowd, of course, as they usually do, a very unpopular group, and god-awful music as well. Let me just remind you of that very quickly. But Tazz, his music interrupts before we can even get going. Of course, the 6-man tag starts with a brawl on the outside. It's absolute chaotic. It doesn't take long for Jacqueline to give a DDT to Stevie Richards on the floor. Tazz takes a beating in only the few minutes that this match actually goes. The Right to Censor beating on him, but it doesn't take too long until Bradshaw comes in, and then once again the rule book completely goes out the window. There's just a brawl literally around the whole ringside area. The Godfather, or Goodfather if you want at this point, attempts to do a splash into the turnbuckle. He actually misses that, and instead he goes straight into a clothesline from hell for Bradshaw, and the 1, 2, 3, and of course the APA and Tazz pick up the victory. Now I must admit, this is slightly botchy, chaotic and messy, but this also fit with the style and the theme of what the Attitude Era represented. It was hardcore, it was no nonsense, it was a brawling style, and that's what you were used to seeing. It wasn't technical 5-star classics with a lot of the roster. You'd have certain people that would do it, but the people that were in this match, you knew what you were getting. This was, you know, fist flying, it was that sort of environment. So for that, really, even though this match won't be looked back as a classic, at the same time, I still had a lot of fun watching it. We cut backstage then for more build-up as we got a little snippet again, because we have Shane McMahon, Vince McMahon against one about later in the evening. Trish Stratus was aligned with Vince McMahon at this point, and she was wheeling Linda McMahon, who was in a wheelchair. Of course, she had a nervous breakdown, was on medication at this point, so she was kind of numb, not aware of anything going on around her. Trish then wheeled Linda to Stephanie McMahon in the back, and Stephanie told her at least one of her children turned out okay, and that champagne and strawberries were given as an instruction for Trish Stratus after Vince McMahon wins his match. We next move on then to the Hardcore Championship, which was Raven, the champion, defending in a triple threat match against the Big Show and Kane. Raven actually attempts to attack Kane before the Big Show even comes to the ring. And I don't know about you, if I was Raven, I'd have let the big two guys go at it, and I'd have hidden and kept out of the way. But this wasn't Raven's strategy. He went straight for Kane before Big Show could even come to the ring. But Big Show does come to the ring, and Raven, for his troubles, is thrown via Kane to the Big Show. Kane comes off of the top rope with a clothesline to the Big Show. These guys don't spend any time in the ringside area. They're fighting for the crowd to the backstage. When they get to the backstage, it is absolute chaos, but it's so much fun to watch. Wrestlers are going through doors, through windows, through walls. Raven even crashes a golf buggy with the Big Show with him in it. Kane also chases the ref in another golf buggy. I'm sure there's a spot as well, famous in this night, where they were very close to cutting out the entire electrics of the whole Astrodome, which would have been hilarious really to watch back, but would have been absolutely disastrous for WrestleMania 17, but thankfully that didn't happen. We get back though to the top of the stage there, and Big Show has got Raven up. Looks like he's going to slam him off of the stage, perhaps through some tables and stuff, but Kane manages to come back out, actually gives a big boot to Big Show, knocking them both off of there, and then Kane jumps up for a big elbow drop to pin the Big Show. 1, 2, 3, and your brand new hardcore champion is none other than the Big Red Machine, Kane. Again, not another Meltzer 5-star classic, but I must say that this was just fun. It's the fun factor brought to wrestling, and sometimes I think that's sometimes what you need. It's probably more important than actually sometimes the technical masterclasses you can have in the ring. But there will be a flip coming in a couple of matches where I'll say the exact opposite thing on this. But the only nitpick I can really have for this match is that I think Kane, he was the runner-up in the 2001 Royal Rumble, most eliminations of all time at that point. You could have argued that you would have felt Kane deserved a bigger WrestleMania moment than winning the Hardcore Championship. But that being said, this was a lot of fun to watch, and I must admit, this was totally different to what I expected. And the thing is, it's not the same to any other WWE match that I can ever remember in history. Going back in the Astrodome, in that backstage area, and the way they were with the golf buggies as well, it's very reminiscent and sort of the way it is at the time, but also it's quite individual in its own way. So for that reason, I think this match, when you look back at it now, it still holds with the test of time. It's a bit laughable with them going through the fake walls and stuff, but I would turn around and say that it's definitely worth going to watch. This match for me, it's definitely one of the ones that I look fondly of when I go back to WrestleMania 17, despite the fact, like I say, that it's not a 5-star classic. We quickly cut backstage to Kurt Angle, and of course Kurt, he's always his comedic best. Kurt Angle as a character just got it. He understood WWE. He's watching a clip for himself, tapping out to Chris Benoit, and he turns to Edge and Christian and says, look, it wasn't an official match, so that never happened. I've still never tapped out. Very brief, very short, but very funny. Gotta love Kurt Angle. We then cut to see The Rock arriving to WrestleMania 17, of course. A big thunderous sort of feel as well, as if you needed more hype for that main event already, but I like this. Just those subtle little things that WWE does to remind you we've got this big match later on. Just in case you'd forgotten, The Rock is in our main event against Steve Austin. I just love it. It's just the little things sometimes that can make a big difference, to just remind you that there's something big on the horizon late in the evening. Just something to remind you this is what you're looking forward to. Next is a match that arguably I'd forgotten was on this card, but I tell you what, was great fun. That sort of power versus speed, big man versus little man dynamic. The European Championship, a championship dear to my heart, being a European. Test the champion against Eddie Guerrero with Perry Saturn in his corner. We have a quick video clip shown to us as well of Eddie costing Test a match against X-Pac on Raw. Early in the match, Test gets his leg caught in the ropes, which leads to an attack for the majority of that match. Of course, no, Test makes that babyface comeback, but we get that classic Eddie Guerrero as only we know him. A low blow that he hits on Test, and he gets the ref's attention so Saturn can come in and hit his finisher. Test does kick out of this. Test makes another comeback, and of course then he hits his big boot on Eddie Guerrero, and may I just say, the force and the power. Test really had one of the best big boots I've ever seen of any performer of any generation in wrestling. But just as it looks like that Test is going to pick up the victory, as the referee makes his count, Dean Malenko comes out and pulls Test to stop the 3 count. Gloating with his efforts, Test pulls Dean Malenko on the apron, and of course the ref is distracted by this point. Perry Saturn hands Eddie Guerrero the championship, and then he hits Test, and we get ourselves a brand new European champion. Good match, this one. Certainly, I will not forget this one going forward. But what I will say is that it's a shame there was a bit of a screwy finish, but it was good to see the Radicals used to good use on WrestleMania. And of course, Eddie Guerrero winning the European Championship. Hey, you can't complain really, can you? We cut backstage then, and of course, once again, more build for the Shane McMahon and Vince McMahon match. And you don't just get that back then on weekly television, you got it on pay-per-views. And I really like this, the idea that you're building the story even on pay-per-view, because there's more layers to it for what the match comes. And you're getting even more hyped and more excited for a match that perhaps arguably, I mean, let's be fair, going into it, Shane McMahon versus Vince McMahon isn't one I would have said would have been high on the radar going into this WrestleMania, but it's good build and preparation here. Mick Foley having an interview with Michael Cole saying he's going to call the match right down the middle, despite Vince McMahon firing him as the commissioner, of course, then who was replaced then by William Regal. Stone Cold Steve Austin arrives backstage, a thunderous reaction from the crowd. Of course, Austin from Texas as well, definitely the most popular guy in Texas on that evening. Stone Cold Steve Austin coming in. So once again, it's another match as well. The main event, you're almost starting to then have those small teasers of building your story further towards that main event, and you've not really got to do anything with, Austin and The Rock. They've just arrived. You're just showing These are stars. These are people that you're taking seriously. These are big time players, and it's just those small little things, a few seconds of TV, that can make such a big difference. I really wish we saw more of this today. I feel it's something that we just don't see enough of in today's market, and it's just those little things, presenting your characters, your wrestlers as such high-profile superstars. We get it with certain people, but we don't get it with everybody, and I just think with certain things we could do that. It seems to me that it's just a little trick that WWE just doesn't do as often in 2021. Next, we've got the famous encounter of Chris Benoit against Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle originally the first one to make his entrance to the ring, and of course he has to get on the mic in classic Kurt style, has to bash Texas as well, telling him to lose the freaking cowboy hats. You're not 7. Hilarious stuff from Kurt Angle. Absolutely loved this. And of course he goes on to explain once again that he never tapped out to Kurt Angle. He's never tapped out in a wrestling match, that it just didn't count when he did it before. It wasn't official. And we have to remember as well that Chris Benoit versus Kurt Angle was made 6 days before WrestleMania, and you wouldn't have believed it with what you got next, and it was an absolute technical masterclass. And what I would say very quickly, as I said earlier on, with the fun factors, not everything needs to be 5 stars, but what I like about it is that we have that here in a 5-star match here, or certainly worthy of the time, with Benoit and Kurt Angle. But you also have the other stuff. It's different variety, it's different flavours for your audience. You're actually catering to everybody at the same time in the same show, and that's what I really like about this. But this match with Angle and Chris Benoit was absolutely fantastic. We saw so much amateur wrestling and mat-based style to kick off. I mean, Benoit gets the better of Kurt Angle, so Kurt has to actually resolve himself. He has to move his strategy and go to a more brawling style to get the upper hand, which was just a clever little bit of story narrative. A fantastic series of exchanges between these two, countering submission holds and attempting high-flying moves from the top rope. Of course, Chris Benoit with the high-flying headbutt, Kurt Angle with a failed attempt of his moonsault. Kurt Angle recovers and of course hits his Olympic slam on Chris Benoit. The ref magically recovers, as of course he does. We get a 1, we get a 2. Chris Benoit kicks out. Chris Benoit does manage to get Kurt Angle into a pin in an attempt, but then it's turned into a roll-up with Kurt Angle holding onto the tights and having to cheat to win to pick up the 3 count. It's classic WWE style, but it's such a perfect match. It's so good and well put together. A very true, underrated WrestleMania match in my opinion. These two going from that sort of amateur-based style, technical-based style, like a 5-star match classic, for Kurt Angle having to get desperate on those occasions, realising he can't keep up with Chris Benoit, knowing he has to brawl, knows that he has to pull the tights, he has to cheat to win, and of course, yes, he does tap out in the match, but it's not officially recognised, which means Kurt Angle, he can still gloat, he can still say he's not tapped out, which of course he does in an interview segment a couple of short moments later, but he's attacked by Chris Benoit in the backstage area, putting the grip across the face, and of course, once again, he's left tapping out. This feud isn't finished at this point, it's just getting going, but I tell you what, it's a fun series between these two. Definitely matches worth going back and checking out, not just from WrestleMania 17. Also, backstage, Michael Cole does go to check on William Regal. He's got an ice pack on his neck. He wants to go back into his commissioner's office and finds Kamala, of all people, on his desk. He tells Kamala to get off and tells him to bugger off. William Regal, his comedic stuff is just fantastic. His facials, his delivery, everything is superb. I must admit, this is WWE comedy that usually would foul with other people that can't deliver these lines, but William Regal was just an absolute gem, and truly another one of those underrated greats in WWE history. Next is the Women's Championship match. Of course, that is Ivory, the champion, who is part of Right to Censor, taking on Chyna. A bit of a backstory with this. Of course, Chyna was attacked by Right to Censor, a pile driver which broke her neck. Ivory repeatedly saying that she would love to embarrass Chyna again at WrestleMania, attacking cardboard cutouts of Chyna, but Chyna does make the return and does make the attack on Ivory, and this sets up the match here for WrestleMania. The match itself is very quick. I mean, Ivory, she's clinging hold to that championship, crying, not wanting to let it go. Chyna turns her back, and immediately she's hit over the back of the neck with the championship belt. Ivory looking to pick up the quick victory, gets a 2 count. It doesn't take very long till Chyna gets back on top, and eventually with a powerbomb finish, Chyna does become your brand new women's champion in WWE. And I must admit, this match, unfortunately, for me, it's the weakest on the card here. I think the moment is much more special than the match itself, but certainly it's an iconic moment seeing Chyna actually holding up the Women's Championship and of course getting her revenge on Ivory at WrestleMania. I think to improve it, I just would like to see this match given some time, because Ivory, she's a very good worker and so was Chyna as well. I don't understand why the match had to be so short. I could have seen perhaps, you know, Ivory after that attack on Chyna at the start of the match, perhaps having more of an offense for a longer time, making it feel more believable, maybe selling on Chyna's neck, perhaps having more time to actually believe into the story. But it was more just the powerhouse of Chyna. The second she got on top, this match was just a mismatch and there was just no comparison. No one was on that level of Chyna. I mean, how great it was for Chyna to win that match. For me, I would have liked to see more drama, more story in this, and a longer match, because I'd say they're two good workers. I think they could have easily gone for a good solid 10 minutes, and I think overall then it would have been a better match and would have got a better rating from me. We're all set then for Vince McMahon versus Shane McMahon, but of course we have another backstage segment just before the match. Vince says to Trish, only bring Linda down to ringside when Shane is immobile. Vince tells Michael Cole that tonight will be shocking, and those famous words as always from Vince McMahon, he guarantees it. And when you heard that, you always knew it was going to deliver. So to give you some of the backstory then to this, Vince McMahon wanting a divorce from Linda McMahon, he's getting very close with Trish Stratus. Trish says that she will do anything for Vince. Linda is in a wheelchair after having a nervous breakdown. She's been committed to an institution and she's also on medication. We get flashbacks of Vince kissing Trish Stratus on stage in front of Linda in a wheelchair, and also barking like a dog segment in the middle of the ring, which, let's be fair, that's going to be cut from Peacock anytime now, because that was an awful segment. Shane actually comes out to confront Vince McMahon on Raw and attacks him, challenges for a match at WrestleMania. Vince does accept, but Shane is then beaten in the ring, and Vince McMahon on the mic says, "I will never forgive your mother for giving birth to you." What a brutal line. We go on as well to the go home week. Of course, WCW is no more. WWE has actually purchased WCW. It's brought into the storyline. Vince thinks he has bought WCW. You have to squeeze the life out of competition, Vince says. But to Vince's shock, Shane buys WCW, turning up on the final ever Nitro in Panama City. Is definitely one of the most iconic moments in wrestling. I definitely recommend, if you're going to go back and watch this show, to go back and watch that Raw as well, because it's not only a good Raw, but for these segments alone. So match 7 then is a street fight. Shane McMahon versus Vince McMahon. Mick Foley is the special guest referee. Shane McMahon does come out to the ring, and he actually gives a shout out to the WCW talent who are watching from an executive box. We've got the likes of younger talent from WCW. There's none of the big stars like Goldberg, the NWO, Sting, anybody like that, but we do see up and coming talents, the likes of Lance Storm there, Mark Gingerak, Hugh Morris, Sean Stasiak, Chavo Guerrero, just to name a few. And this match, I mean, it's not going to go down again as a 5-star classic, but it's pure storytelling from start to finish of this match. The match quickly brawls to the outside around the ring. Shane McMahon misses an elbow from the top rope and goes through an announce table. Vince, of course, moving out of the way. Shane is completely out of it, which, of course, is exactly what Vince wanted. He was immobile. Trish Stratus then wheels Linda McMahon to ringside, and, of course, just as she gets down there, she slaps the chairman. Your first twist of the match. Trish Stratus no longer putting up with Vince McMahon anymore. A brawl does start with Stephanie and Trish. Foley gets involved, tries to pull Stephanie off of Trish. She slaps Mick Foley, which is quite entertaining. Stephanie then runs to the back and Trish follows. Mick Foley gets Vince McMahon to back away from Linda as Foley is wheeling Linda McMahon away from the ring. Vince attacks Mick Foley, hitting with a steel chair. Vince McMahon puts her in the ring and puts her in the corner on a steel chair as he wants her to watch him beating his son Shane with trash cans. He does that with 3 attempts, and on the 3rd attempt as well, talking smack to Linda McMahon, he goes to do it and she rises out of the chair, and I tell you what, I've never heard a place erupt the way it did. The whole Astrodome just went in complete chaos of cheers. Vince McMahon turning, she kicks him in the groin. Mick Foley coming in at the perfect time then to attack Vince McMahon as well, putting him into the corner, and then Shane McMahon goes to the outside to the top rope, and for the first time from Shane McMahon, we're used to seeing these big spots from him, coast to coast, which for me was a big shock. I'd only ever seen RVD do it. I certainly didn't think it'd be in Shane's arsenal. Shane McMahon perfectly delivering the coast to coast to pick up the 1, 2, 3 for the win. And of course, celebration as the match ends. Shane hugs Linda after the match. And I'll tell you what, as I say, it's not a perfect match by any stretch of the imagination. Some of the story, I'm sure, in today's world probably isn't seen favourably, but through living through the time and also just going back and watching the way that crowd erupts in a different arena, a different place, a different time, maybe it doesn't get the same reaction, but on this night, on this show, it just seemed to be at the perfect time, the perfect culmination of the storyline and storm, and everything just went in one place where everyone erupted, everyone got with it. You felt it watching your television screen, and just seeing Vince McMahon after months of treating Linda like garbage, like Shane as well, some of the vicious lines you've seen that even you hear on the build up to this match, for then the vengeance to be given and Shane McMahon to pick up the victory. It just felt like the perfect ending to this match. We then got a shot of WrestleMania Access and just see what it was like back then compared to what it is today. It's just amazing to see how it's grown so much over the years. But we see it with the Hardy Boys as well, and they said that this was the match that those three teams created, TLC, which was going to be the next match, the Hardys, Edge and Christian and the Dudleys, and that the Hardys were going to give their all. And that they certainly did. Everyone is a victim in tables, ladders and chairs. It doesn't take long for the toys to get involved here. Ladders being used as clotheslines. Bubba powerbombs a Hardy through Edge, through a table. All three teams are going up the ladders together and failing. But with this one, compared to when I had actually the original TLC back at SummerSlam, we had assistance for each team as we went through the matches. Spike Dudley comes down to aid the Dudley Boys, taking out Edge and Christian. The Dudley Death Drop is put through a table to Christian. Rhino is the assistant to aid Edge and Christian, goring Matt Hardy through a table. And of course, Lita comes to aid the Hardys. Almost becomes 3 teams of 3 at this point onwards. Some big spots here. We've got the swanton of a 20-foot ladder on the outside through Spike and Rhino for the tables. Jeff Hardy, a daredevil to say the very least, always have these big spots here on WrestleMania. And of course, who could forget perhaps one of the most iconic moments of WrestleMania history with this TLC ladder match? Edge spearing Jeff Hardy from 20 feet in the air. Jeff Hardy literally holding on to the championships with Edge on the top of the ladder to hit that spear, and the whole place, the thunder, just the eruption of how that spot is taken. Rhino then pushing Matt Hardy and Bubba off the top of the ladder. They go to the outside through 4 tables. Edge holds Devon on one side of the ladder, and we've got Rhino assisting, helping Christian up the other side of the ladder to get the championships. We've got brand new tag team champions, and of course the tag team champions going in were the Dudley Boys. This is one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time, in my opinion. Certainly one of the best TLC matches of all time. These 3 teams put this match on the map, and this arguably is the best one of the lot. I thoroughly enjoyed watching this. It's a special match, just some of those death-defying spots. Just literally, there was no time to respite. Literally, it was big spot after big spot after big spot. These 3 teams put their bodies on the line here, with the assistance as well from other members here helping those teams. Yes, you could say it's nice to see clean victories, but this just helped to take another level up, because of course, with Rhino and Spike Dudley not long coming off from ECW after they closed their doors, just gives something a bit extra here, and I thoroughly enjoyed this match. And this, back then when I watched this show for the first time, was my favourite match on the card, and it's still up there as joint there. But I tell you what, I do have one that's joined it, which we'll be talking about later on during this show. But yeah, absolutely incredible. Fantastic. This, honestly, if there's matches that you need to go and see from this show right now, and I might just have to go and watch again, this certainly is one of them. Next, we get the Astrodome attendance record. It's 67,925 people in attendance here for this WrestleMania. Just shows with those eruptions of the crowd how much you could hear it through the screen. So many diehard passionate fans there. Nearly 70,000 people. You might think at this point in the pay-per-view, you need a little bit of light relief. Well, WrestleMania has you covered. The Gimmick Battle Royal. Something, if you wanted something from the old school, a bit of 80s, a bit of golden era, maybe a bit of new generation, you got it in this match. And just to even give you that flavour on commentary, we had a break here with Mean Gene Okerlund and Bobby Heenan commentating this match, and the battle royal including such legends as the Bushwhackers, Duke the Dumpster Droese, the Iron Sheik, Earthquake, the Goon, who remembers the Goon, Doink the Clown, Kamala with Kim Sheet and Harvey Wimpleman, Repo Man, James E. Cornette, we had Nikolai Volkov, Michael P.S. Hayes, One Man Gang, the Gobbledygooker, Tugboat, Hillbilly Jim, Brother Love, and Sergeant Slaughter. Now, forgive me, this is a train wreck of a battle royal. It is very quick, but it is meant to be light relief, and you have to take it for what it is, and I enjoyed it for what it was. The eliminations are very quick. People are just being thrown over the top rope the whole way through. Reaper Man, of course, in classic fashion, the first one thrown out. There were boos when Doink the Clown was eliminated, certainly the most popular gimmick that was in that battle royal, coming sort of in that sort of latter stages, but he did make it to the final four. As we get towards the end of the match, Sergeant Slaughter throws Brother Love over the ring, which then leads Hillbilly Jim to throw Sergeant Slaughter out of the ring, and then Iron Sheik, coming from behind as well, just throws Hillbilly Jim out of the ring, and then that means that Iron Sheik wins the Gimmick Battle Royal. But of course, we have to have the happy ending, even for the golden era of WrestleMania. Sergeant Slaughter putting on the Cobra Clutch on the Iron Sheik after the match. This is good, fun filler. Nothing more than that. Certainly nothing to take seriously. Yes, it's not the best part of WrestleMania, but it's certainly what I still enjoyed it, and I love the nostalgia, especially as a young growing up there, seeing some of those old faces come back. I just thought this was a nice little touch, and something that I think even wouldn't mind seeing today actually in places. We have the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. We have a lot of our lower card jobbers in these matches. Maybe it would be fun to bring a few legends back for it. Certainly we see it from time to time, but maybe we could do it yearly. It'd be fun to see some legends come back for this. Certainly not to win it, but just to bring that fun factor in there. I certainly think more people will be invested seeing a few legends in a match like this than it would see them coming in towards the top end of the card. Next, we've got The Undertaker versus Triple H, the first time of their 3 times of wrestling at WrestleMania. To give backstory for this match, Triple H has beaten everyone. He'd beaten Stone Cold Steve Austin at No Way Out, also showing him beating The Rock. The Undertaker tells Triple H that he has never beaten him and he will make him famous. Triple H shown attacking Undertaker backstage, sitting on a chair that is choking the Undertaker and saying he is already famous. Undertaker, he's arrested on SmackDown for attacking Triple H. A restraining order is put in so he can't come within 25 feet of Stephanie McMahon. Kane then is sent to do the dirty work, sent after Stephanie, as he isn't restrained to get to Triple H. Taker then gets to Regal to agree to a match backstage, with Kane threatening to throw Stephanie over a flight of stairs in the gorilla position, and Triple H then at the end of this is shown destroying the Undertaker's motorcycle. One really cool thing about this WrestleMania as well, Triple H coming out to his theme music being played live, The Game by Motorhead at WrestleMania, just really cool, and just in general, just to watch this. This felt important. You knew at this point we're getting towards the main event. We've had that light relief from the match before. This is showtime, this is WrestleMania, this is what it's all about. It is the show of shows, and we're really going to get in that with our next match now. And of course, just to make it feel even more, when you've had Motorhead like that, you then get the sound of Limp Bizkit and Rollin' playing. Undertaker, of course, with the biker gimmick, of course, he's got at this point coming out to Limp Bizkit. Absolutely superb. And for me, just hearing those 2 themes alone, I was absolutely hyped for this match. The match starts on the floor, and Triple H easily goes through a Spanish announce table. Quite comical, if we're being quite honest. But the match does continue, goes into the ring, until Triple H attempts to bring in a sledgehammer. The ref takes it away. Taker, in the meantime, he catapults Triple H into the corner, which goes into the referee. Then this is followed with Undertaker hitting a chokeslam. The referee counts to 2. There's a kick out. The ref will take a look at the referee in disgust, and he actually kicks him, followed by an elbow drop. This leads to the referee being completely unconscious for a long time. The brawl then leads them into the crowd, and they go into the technical area. Triple H gets the upper hand, hitting Undertaker with a number of steel chair shots to the body and to the legs. Taker does get back, and he chokeslams out of the technical area. Triple H straight to hell on the floor. Taker then lands an elbow drop from the technical area, and a brawl leads them going back through the crowd to the ring. Undertaker does go for the sledgehammer, but is kicked in the groin at the last minute. Triple H would be hit though by a tombstone. The ref is still unconscious. He must have been unconscious for around 9 minutes at this point. He's been out for that long. A little nitpick, why another referee hasn't come out at this point, why it's been allowed to be as violent as it has been, probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but for what it is, it's awesome, so I'm not going to complain. The last ride from The Undertaker is countered by Triple H by using the sledgehammer. The referee finally comes round, but thankfully only for a 2 count. There isn't the 10 punches in the corner by Triple H, but it's countered into The Undertaker's finisher at the time, the last ride, and Taker gets the victory. And one thing that's key after this match, Jim Ross acknowledges that Undertaker has a 9-0 streak at WrestleMania. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first time I can remember the streak being acknowledged at this point for the Taker. This match is just awesome. It's brutal, it's violent. It became like another hardcore style match, kind of very Attitude Era-esque. which is what I really liked about it. Yes, like I say, there are some nitpicks you could take around and pull the bones out of this match, but hell, this was a fun match. I really enjoyed this, and this is probably seen as the weakest match of their WrestleMania trilogy, which just goes to show what great chemistry these two have in the ring. And for me personally, I think they're all kind of in and around the same sort of area. I really enjoyed all of their matches over the years. So Undertaker, Triple H, this match for me, despite the fact, like I said, there are some nitpicks, gets a massive thumbs up from me. I really enjoyed this one. Next, it's main event time. It is the WWE Championship. It is your champion, The Rock, defending against Stone Cold Steve Austin in what is arguably the biggest main event at this point in WrestleMania history. The fact that things have culminated with no longer the Monday Night War of WCW, ECW no longer around, the two biggest stars in the company who had gone through many matches to get to this point, the two top baby faces in the company here going one-on-one in the biggest match possible at WrestleMania. Of course, it is time for the video package with Limp Bizkit, which is just absolutely incredible, sharing the backstory for us. Of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin was the winner of the 2001 Royal Rumble, one of the best Royal Rumble matches of all time, in my opinion. Vince McMahon orders Stone Cold's wife, Deborah, to be The Rock's manager. Of course, The Rock doesn't want it, and he says it's not his responsibility of what happens to Deborah. We see Kurt Angle putting the ankle lock on Deborah. Steve Austin makes the save, but he also stunners The Rock. No one touches his wife. Multiple stunners and rock bottoms and brawling is shown for this amazing video package. The Rock says that Stone Cold will get the absolute best from The Rock at WrestleMania, every bit of blood, sweat and tears. And in response, in the final words before this show, Stone Cold Steve Austin in the sit-down interview says, "I need to beat you, Rock. I need to beat you more than anything you can ever imagine. There can only be one WWE champion, with all due respect." And of course, those words ring true when you come towards the end of this match. Now, of course, as we're about to get the announcement and the match is going to kick off, Howard Finkel actually announces that this match will be a no disqualification match, to the shock of everybody. Jim Ross and Paul Heyman continue to question this surprise decision and why it is made. The place absolutely erupts for the entrance of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's a pro-Austin crowd in his hometown of Texas, and you would be forgiven if that affected the narrative and the story for you in this match, because this was a brawl and it was physical from the very start. Stone Cold Steve Austin, despite being heavily seen as the babyface, he's desperate and showing heel tactics from the very start, removing turnbuckle pads and even hitting The Rock with the ring bell. The Rock is busted wide open. Austin, he's on top of The Rock in the ring, punching The Rock to make the wound worse, continually brutally attacking The Rock until The Rock does finally manage to get back into it. And The Rock does promise Austin he'll give him everything at WrestleMania and knows he has to get onto Austin's level. He's throwing Austin headfirst into the exposed turnbuckle, hitting Austin with the ring bell. Both at this point are bleeding, and the fight goes back outside. Austin hitting The Rock with a monitor as well. The Rock does get the sharpshooter onto Austin in the ring. We see it's kind of reminiscent almost, if you want, of WrestleMania 13 at this point in the match. You can see that submission match with Bret Hart, the pouring of the blood down Austin's face, and that point it was like the double turn, wasn't it? You know, where Austin became the big baby face. But Austin, like I said, he's had the heel tactics in this match, so it's a very clever bit of psychology that you see that's brought into this encounter. But of course, he makes the ropes, although perhaps they shouldn't have counted in a no DQ match. Again, perhaps I'm slightly nitpicking. The Rock does reverse though. Austin puts the sharpshooter on The Rock. Poetic justice. It's almost symmetry throughout the entire match here. The Rock uses his strength to get out of this hold, but he is put back into it once again here. The Rock makes it to the ropes. The referee tries to break the hold. Austin gives the ref the middle finger. We then get a nice little throwback from Steve Austin to go back to the Ringmaster using the $1 Million Dream. The Rock actually turns it though into a pin where Austin does kick out. Rock hits a stunner, again, a kick out at 2. At this point, this is when Vince McMahon does come down to the ring. We see The Rock hitting the people's elbow, and weirdly enough, Vince McMahon breaks the count at 2, and the crowd cheers. It's a very bizarre moment because Vince McMahon is helping Stone Cold, and it's almost as if Vince McMahon has turned babyface, but that's not quite how the narrative is to unfold in this match. The Rock chases Vince McMahon outside, comes in and runs into a rock bottom from Stone Cold. Then we find Earl Hebner knocked to the ring floor after a stunner attempt. We get a low blow from Steve Austin. In a shocking twist, this is the point then that Steve Austin actually directs Vince McMahon to get a chair. He actually holds The Rock for Vince to actually hit him with the steel chair. I think this is the first time the fans actually realise, hang on, they're actually working together here. There's a pinfall attempt and The Rock actually kicks out. Austin gives The Rock the finger salute whilst holding a steel chair. This is actually countered though at this point. It turns into a rock bottom. Vince actually gets up on the apron. The Rock brings Vince McMahon into the ring and of course lays the smackdown on him. He then turns and actually goes into a stunner. It's a kick out. Austin sees Vince's assisted chair to hit The Rock in the skull. Once again, The Rock does kick out, but then Austin just beats The Rock, censors with like a million chair shots. Austin at this point finally, mercifully, gets the 3 count and is the new champion. And of course, this is the point where we realise that actually Austin's joined the dark side. Him and Vince, they shake hands after the match and both drink beers, cheers over The Rock's beaten body. Of course, JR is in classic form here, screaming, Austin sold his soul to Satan for the championship. He thought he knew that man. Why, Steve? Why? We deserve to know why. I mean, JR, he's always on such top form, and of course, these were such iconic moments in the Attitude Era, and of course, it just goes back to that early part there from that interview that you knew what the direction was going to be, that, you know, he had to beat The Rock. He wasn't going to accept being second place, to the point he sold his soul, turned heel, and joined Vince McMahon, which has to be one of the most shocking finishes to WrestleMania of all time. I mean, Austin does hit The Rock one more time with the title, and Austin and Vince do leave the ring together. It's just so unbelievable on this night, but the question is, was it the right booking move, I suppose, is the way you have to look at it. And of course, I think long term you turn around and say, no, it wasn't the right booking move, because not long afterwards, I mean, Austin was heel throughout that summer. We had the invasion stuff going on, and I think fans just in general at that point, you could turn around and say that the Attitude Era ended on this night. And I think a lot of people, the viewership did start to drop a bit after the Attitude Era ended and Austin and that storyline had sort of finished. You know, we never really got back to the heights after that. So in sort of hindsight, you would have had to turn around and say that, yeah, perhaps it was the wrong move to do. But at the same time, maybe you could have had a moment where Austin stuns Vince after the match. I think that's probably the only logical way, is that he actually was able to convince Vince McMahon that he was going to join the dark side to get the championship, and of course then turns on Vince McMahon again, because everyone loves seeing Vince get a stunner. It's the only way around I think you can get there, and there were a couple of opportunities in the summer you could have turned Austin back to being the babyface. Had odd moments where they had big eruptions for it, but would go back to being that heel character. It felt like it went on towards the end of the year before we really got Austin back to that babyface, where at that point I think a lot of the momentum had sort of gone away. So in hindsight, maybe this was the wrong thing, but to finish off the show, it was such a shocking finish. It was something you never really felt like you saw coming, and the story narrative along with the great action of what this match presented, it was a lengthy match as well. I now have this up there along with the TLC 2. I mean, for me, this has to really probably go down as match of the night. The ring psychology, the storytelling that went in within it. I mean, of course, the brutalization for the TLC match is fantastic. All the bodies go on the line, but I just think with that story narrative with this as well, this has to be my match of the night. To give this a score out of 10, it's no surprise I am giving this a perfect 10 out of 10, because even on the weaker moments of the show, I still enjoyed them. This is my favourite pay-per-view of all time, so I suppose there's no surprise in saying, is this the greatest WrestleMania of all time? For me, yes it is. I think it is the best of all time. I think it's closely followed by WrestleMania 19, which is another near-on perfect show. It's hard to get everything together because everything needs to come together for a WrestleMania to be perfect, or even a wrestling show in general to be perfect. You have to have all the right matches in the right order, the right length of time for the matches, the way that the story unravels, and also the crowd reaction is a big part of it. It means so much to it, and on this night, this crowd was absolutely on a different level. It's one of the most special crowds that I can remember ever seeing in a wrestling arena. And you turn around and say, if you could be a fan to be at a show, this certainly would have been one of them. To be a part of that passionate, hardcore, enthusiastic crowd that reacted to some of those spots there, to have been in and amongst attendance for that, would just so many goosebumps and a special feeling for me. Certainly would be one I'd love to be a part of. That for this WrestleMania and 19 are both near on perfect, but for me, for what this show represents at this time, the fact it's the closing chapter of the Monday Night War, the end of the Attitude Era, which is arguably the greatest era ever in wrestling, certainly the most popular few years of wrestling with TV ratings and interest at that point. Yes, it's a different market today though, with YouTube and social media and the packages you have today, but to look at things then where you had to literally go and watch on your television sets. You had to judge things on people that watched and pay-per-view buy rates and the popularity then. That certainly that was a different time and a different level. And it just, I mean, wrestling was mainstream back at the late 90s, early noughties, and this certainly was just, it perfectly rounded off what was a big, long, lengthy Monday Night War, and just, you know, some of those storylines. I mean, Austin and McMahon had been going on for many, many years, and that was almost like a closing chapter at that point of that storyline. So for me, all in all, yes, this is the greatest WrestleMania of all time, not just because the show is near on perfect, despite, like I say, some of the moments of the show you could turn and say, well, that match wasn't as good or whatever. I still had fun watching them. I still think they were short as well. They weren't like long, lengthy duds. They, you know, you could quickly move on to the next match. So for me, this is near on perfect, and the importance of the show and timing and representation just puts it head and shoulders over WrestleMania 19, which of course is no easy feat. But that's all from me. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. It's been my WrestleMania 17 review, the greatest WrestleMania of all time in my opinion. Do you agree with me? Is it the greatest WrestleMania of all time? Let me know in the comments what's your favourite WrestleMania and what your thoughts are of this WrestleMania. Also, I would love to interact with you and know what your memories are from WrestleMania 17. Of course, this is the 20-year anniversary of WrestleMania 17, so that means this year is WrestleMania 37, and the predictions video will be on the channel very, very shortly if they are not already by the time you're watching this. So make sure to go and check them out ahead of this Saturday and Sunday, the big weekend of WrestleMania in Tampa Bay, and know my thoughts and predictions for the show. You can check out other retro reviews as well. WrestleMania 9 is available on the channel also, and there'll be more videos dropping each and every day throughout the week. Of course, NXT Stand and Deliver, WrestleMania 37, the reviews, reaction, and much, much more. But that's all for me. Thank you for watching. Take care. Have yourselves a great day. Thank you for watching. You've been watching SCW here on YouTube.